Hi, I'm Alexandra Snyder. I'm the CEO of the Life Legal Defense Foundation, and we are a nationwide pro-life law firm, and we handle cases involving threats to vulnerable life. So this is from the very beginning of life, from unborn children, all the way through to the natural end of life. And we do that through litigation, education, and advocacy. And today I'm here with Albin Rhomberg, a pro-life advocate who was directly involved in documenting one of the most disturbing and largely forgotten incidents in history. Albin, thank you so much for joining us today. And I just want to say too, thank you. You are a client of ours, of Life Legal's, just a longtime, faithful, courageous pro-life advocate. And just what you have done in the effort and in the successful effort in many cases to save human lives is truly, truly remarkable. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Life Legal, for representing me and some of the difficulties I've got myself into.
all for a good cause. Definitely all for a good cause. And it was really an honor. It's been an honor to represent you. So I want to talk about this discovery of over 16,000 aborted babies in February of 1982, stored in containers at a private home in Woodland Hills, California. So, Albin, tell us, first, maybe you want to introduce yourself a little bit more, and then tell us, how did you get involved in the pro-life movement?
Well, I got involved in the pro-life movement, oddly enough, through the University of California. Doesn't seem like a likely place, but I was a graduate student in applied physics and information science at University of California, San Diego. And a friend of mine was on the student council there. And one day he told me that they'd had a meeting and the vice chancellor for student affairs, it's quite an interesting title, but that he had announced that he was very pleased that he'd been able to get coverage for abortions into this insurance for students on the campus. I guess he thought everybody would be enthusiastic about that. Well, I wasn't enthusiastic. I was, at that point, I wasn't an activist, but I was very much opposed to the idea of abortion. And I was disturbed to think that we would all be required to pay for it because this particular insurance plan was not optional.
Wow.
You had to pay for it. I think you maybe could prove that you had other insurance, but most people didn't have separate insurance. So my friend also wasn't in favor of it. And it turned out various people we talked to, they also weren't. So we made some objection to that. And not to go into too many of the details, but ultimately speaking, the university said that there could be no exceptions.
Wow.
So if you didn't pay, you would be expelled from the university and your academic program would be finished.
Oh my goodness.
So that's what, now some of the people kind of caved in under the circumstances, and we did have some litigation, but at that time Life Legal didn't exist. And there wasn't very much representation at that time, very organized. So the end result is that it kind of finished my career there. And,
really?
Yep, that was all done.
Oh, I thought you were going to tell me that the university caved somehow, but
no. They were adamant. They stayed with it. And a couple of the other people there were some freshmen, women students. They both simply transferred to other places. They gave up and they hardly enrolled because it was near the beginning of the year. So they kind of gave up. And some of the other people, about 100 people joined in our protest. And in general, most of them ended up just by default paying. But anyway, we did file a lawsuit against them. It didn't go very far. But that got me involved. That was the entry point.
Wow. That is something. I mean, and to sacrifice your academic career at that point, I mean, I think you went on to continue your education, but still that is quite something. So let's jump. I mean, I don't want to jump too far ahead, but I do definitely want to talk about this discovery in Woodland Hills and how that happened. So at that point, were you already very active in the pro-life movement, or was this still relatively early on?
No, I was fairly active by that time. Okay. I'd met some other activist pro-lifers, particularly the Dreisbach Dr. Philip Dreisbach and his wife Jeanette.
Yeah.
And they had an organization they set up called California Pro-Life Medical Association and various other organizations. And I say there needs to be plenty of different organizations for different purposes, even though they may be temporary or just sort of ad hoc organizations. But they were also interested in legislation. I'd helped them with that and various other projects. But we noticed in the newspapers there was a surprising short little story in, I think, the LA Times and other newspapers saying that they discovered this cargo container. It was one of these shipping containers that had a large number of aborted babies in it. At first, it seemed to be the story started off as maybe just a few hundred. But as the story developed, it seemed to be much larger. So we decided, that is the Dreisbachs and myself, that we should look into this. So I went to Los Angeles to start to look into it. And the first steps, of course, it was already in the hands of the county. So I went to the medical legal department of the prosecutor's office.
So when you came across this story, where were these children at that point?
By that time, the cargo container, let's just start. It had been, it had come to light because the person who, I believe he was actually purchasing it on time. Some people thought he was leasing it or renting it. And he lived in Woodland Hills. And there was a company that dealt in these called Martin Container Company located in Compton, near the harbors in Los Angeles, Long Beach. And the owner of that company this man named Melvin Roy Weisberg, he'd come to him and he'd purchased this container and he had it taken out to Woodland Hills, which is about 50 miles away in a suburb. And I believe he told him he was going to use it to store tennis court lights. And that's what his intended purpose, at least that's what he told him. But as it happened, he didn't make the payments. He was kind of a deadbeat. It turned out he was making a lot of money, but apparently he had a cocaine habit, and most of the money went to cocaine.
And he was the actual abortionist that...
He was was not. He was simply, I would call him an entrepreneur.
Okay.
He was a crook, really.
Yeah.
He didn't have any medical training. He had no pathological training. He just realized this was an opportunity to make money. And the way he was making money is he made arrangements with abortion facilities to pick up the bodies.
Wow.
Now, they were happy to get rid of them because getting rid of them was a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And he would, in effect, do it for free. He would just come and pick them up. And so he'd made arrangements with several, particularly ones that were doing late abortions. And he'd had an office in downtown Los Angeles, but he got into trouble there because he was very careless. And he left the containers in the corridor of this building.
Oh my goodness.
And some children found them, and there was other embarrassments. So I think the landlord kicked him out. So
horrifying.
So instead he was keeping them at his home. And this was a nice suburb. And these cargo containers, I think he thought that would be a good place to keep them. So most people are familiar with, you've seen these cargo containers on the highway.
Sure.
And they put them on ships.
But you don't think they're full of dead
No,
babies?
you certainly don't. You think they're full of Amazon stuff from China.
Mm-hmm.
And they come in different sizes. The one he purchased was 20 feet long, 8 feet wide, and about 8.5 feet tall. They're modular. They're made out of steel. They have big doors on the back. So they're big. They can hold up to about 30 tons of material.
Wow.
So he had it there, but he didn't make the payments. So finally, the owner of the company got disgusted with it and decided that there was no hope to get the payments. So he decided to repossess the container. And he sent his crew, and he had a special truck that could pick these things up off the ground. And so when they went there, they immediately had difficulty because, first of all, he wasn't home. There was no contact. He was kind of like hiding out. But his crew decided that, ultimately speaking, they would just go into his property and pick it up with their truck. But when they tried to do it, it was so heavy, so unusually heavy, that it broke the winches on his machinery.
Oh my goodness.
So he was not able to pick it up. By this time, the container company owner was getting very angry. No payments, his truck was damaged. So he actually hired a crane to come to the place to pick the container up and put it on the truck and take it away. So when he got it back to his yard, which was down in, as I say, in Compton, California, they just parked it there. And a day or two later, he told them that they wanted to empty it out, whatever was in it, and he was going to sell the container or, put it back to use again. So when they opened it up, there was a terrible smell.
I was going to say, I mean, it seemed like it would have been noticeable even, I don't even really want to.
Yeah, it was, and by that time, since it had been dropped and so on, some of the containers had spilled over. And when they looked inside, there were all these cardboard boxes filled with these plastic containers. And some of them fell out, and some of the workers, they couldn't figure out. At first, they were very surprised. And then they said, well, these are little babies.
Oh, my goodness.
And they said some of them have their heads chopped off, and they were shocked. Some of the workers got sick, actually. So the owner came out and looked at it, and of course, he called the authorities. He called the health department, and he called the sheriff and the police and so on. And they came there, and of course, they didn't know what to make of it. So at that point, within a few days, they picked up the container and moved it in downtown Los Angeles to a site that was owned by the county. And they put it there. And then there was, of course, a lot of news came out. In the LA Times, it was a big story. We could tell immediately that, first of all, probably there might be some kind of an examination, so the coroner or medical examiner might be involved. But also, of course, there were legal questions. So I went to the district attorney's office in Los Angeles, is a population more than most states. So the medical legal office, the prosecutor has like 600 or 800 attorneys.
Right.
So it's a huge operation. And they have a separate section for medical legal affairs that has to do with cases, of deaths and medical affairs. And the chief of that was a person named Nikola Mikulitic. He was from a Croatian family. His father was actually a medical professor, and he was very well informed about medical matters. And, so I told him that I was interested, and he was kind of puzzled, why were we interested? Well, I was rather guarded about it because, we didn't know he might not want to give us any information.
So you went to the prosecutor and specifically to the person in charge of medical
legal affairs. Yeah, that was the department.
Yes.
That he was in charge of. And so I made contact with him, and I was, again, we were being rather careful because I didn't know what his attitude would be. Was he militantly pro-abortion? Usually people have opinions.
It shouldn't matter.
It shouldn't matter.
I mean, this is desecration of human bodies.
Yeah.
I mean, however you feel about abortion, I mean, I would think that once you see something like this, you think this is horrific and no civilized society should allow this.
But we already knew that there was a big controversy because the radical feminist groups had already involved themselves.
Oh, they already knew about this.
They knew immediately. As soon as they read the newspaper, they got involved.
And what was their argument? Like,
well, their argument was that this was simply a medical waste. They said, this is just trash.
And you'll see the photographs later. And for somebody to say, I don't know if they didn't look at these human bodies that are clearly identifiable as human babies, or this is just the way that they whitewash this stuff.
They took an extremist position, and it was really revealing, surprising to find how extreme they were. Some of the radical feminists at that time, some still around, like Gloria Allred, National Organization of Women, National Jewish Women.
How is this defensible? I mean, in any way?
Well, you would think it is indefensible, but they were prepared. Surprisingly, you would think they would be embarrassed, but they didn't seem to have any embarrassment at all. They simply said that any other use than simply, and they said they shouldn't be cremated either. They said they should be incinerated. They said this is waste, so it's got not incinerated, not cremated.
Be buried.
Yeah,
I mean at the very minimum.
Yeah. So immediately there was a antagonistic situation developing there, and of course the public authorities were somewhat caught in the middle of it. Because there's always politics involved.
That's the part that I just don't understand, though. I mean, I don't understand that. I don't understand people defending Kermit Gosnell. so much of what
Mhm.
happens in the context of abortion
Mhm.
is absolutely not defensible. And if you look at these images, you can see this is a crime against humanity, a crime against individual human beings, but also a crime against humanity. And
Yeah.
for somebody to say, nothing to see here, move along,
Mhm.
that's almost more shocking
Yeah.
than anything that you've said so far. So
Yeah.
go ahead.
Well, and
Sorry.
of course, we know that one of our largest organizations involved with abortion is Planned Parenthood.
Mhm.
And just recently, we see our state government is giving them an extra $90 million of our taxpayer money.
Yep.
And they're doing thousands and thousands of abortions, about 400,000 every year. So here we are. Things haven't changed very much. If anything, maybe they've gotten worse. So, but anyway, the head of this section there, Nikola Mikulatich, they call him Nick. He was, well, he's a public official, and he was kind of uncertain about what my interest was, and I was a little bit cautious about telling him.
Right. But it shouldn't matter.
It shouldn't matter. It shouldn't matter at all. But then one of the strangest things happened. There were so many strange things that sort of worked out that allowed us to get the information. That weekend, for some reason, I think I was getting some things. I think it was a Home Depot. And to my surprise, Los Angeles is a big area. I saw him there in the Home Depot.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
And I thought, shall I talk to him or not? Because he didn't see me, and I saw him down some aisle. I thought, well, maybe it wouldn't hurt to say hello to him. So I went up and said hello to him. He said, why don't you come to my house for dinner?
Wow.
I thought, well, this is kind of surprising.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, he's inviting me. I guess I'll go.
Providential meeting.
Yes, yes, this was most unusual because here we could be kind of talking outside of the office. I get some idea of perhaps what his real opinion would be on such matters. So I went to his house. He lived in the South Bay area, and we had dinner and quite a long conversation. And I realized he was fairly sympathetic to the pro-life point of view. I wouldn't say completely. He was not entirely clear what his position was. I met his wife, and he had son and a daughter. And it turned out his son was very unusual. His son was a kind of a super genius.
Oh, wow.
In fact, his son later went to university, and he graduated from law school when he was 18 years old.
Wow.
He graduated from university, I think, when he was like 13. Then he went to law school. So anyway, it was an unusual family. And as I say, his father had been a medical professor in Berlin, in Germany.
Okay.
So
that would have been,
like the end of World War II, about that era.
Okay.
So we'd gotten a little friendly, and from then on, I kind of kept in touch with him. Now, remember, this is before cell phones and smartphones and all that kind of stuff. There was no internet, no email, nothing like that. Everything was no texting. You were kind of primitive communication. You had to drive around and call people on the phone or knock on their door. So what we wanted to have done is we wanted to have it investigated as thoroughly as possible. And in Los Angeles, and as in California laws, counties are run by boards of supervisors, of which I believe there are 5.
I think so.
Counties.
In LA, yeah.
So there were 5, and they represent districts. Now, of course, Los Angeles being such a huge population, and the supervisors, most of them in Los Angeles were very liberal. However, at that time,
well, you would have had Michael Antonovich at that time.
Michael Antonovich was one of the supervisors.
Right.
And he was a Republican, and he'd been in the state legislature. And some of us had some knowledge of him. So
wait, are you saying then that this Nick said he did not seem inclined to prosecute?
No, he didn't seem very inclined to prosecute.
This is what I don't understand. I mean, these are human beings, and this is clearly desecration of a corpse at the very minimum.
Yeah.
I mean, in addition to how you got these human beings in your possession, what justification would somebody have for not prosecuting? Well, I understand prosecutorial discretion, but I mean, this goes
well, I think part of it was in people's minds is who's responsible? Is it the doctor that tore the babies to pieces? Is he somehow responsible?
Right, but let's just not say nobody's responsible.
Nobody. Well, I think Nick Mikulicz, I think he was kind of struggling with it. And I found he was doing a lot of research on it. He was researching the laws. He was spending a lot of time on it. He got very involved with it personally.
And meanwhile, though, this this individual who rented this storage container and procured these babies. So, and you said he was doing it for free, but he must have been. I mean, you said he was an entrepreneur, so somewhere he must have been getting reimbursed for this.
His idea was that he had various ideas, but his idea was. I think in some cases, maybe he had the idea, maybe he'd get someone to pay him for collecting them, but I think that didn't work out. Maybe, but anyway, he was gradually accumulating more and more and more, and I might say he wasn't finding a market for them.
Oh my goodness.
I think he was looking for people who were going to buy them and so on, that he could sell them
for research, or I mean,
well,
similar.
There were various ideas. One idea was that you might make them into art objects.
Oh my goodness!
That you would embed them in plastic, like sometimes you can buy these things, like you have a bug, embedded in plastic, or some other. So apparently, that was one idea, that they would embed them in plastic for like bookends and things. Now you think, who would buy such a thing?
Who would even come up with an idea like that? I mean, this is.
Some of these people were
so disturbing.
Pretty disturbing. I think they might verge on being insane.
Yeah.
But the other thing he was thought of that he could make now the main place he was really making a lot of money on, again it was fraudulent. He was claimed that he was doing pathological examinations on them.
Oh, so he was filing for,
and then he would file claims with the state of California.
Wow!
To collect money for supposedly doing examinations on them.
And that wasn't worthy of prosecution in itself. I mean,
I think that would be fraudulent.
See a whole list of potential crimes here.
Yeah.
Wow.
So to make it look kind of realistic, he hired a pathologist. The guy's name was Milo Alado. He was from the Philippines.
You remember all these names? Yeah. That's remarkable.
And he was a rather dubious character, I would say, too. He had a job working for the Veterans Administration as a pathologist, but I guess he wasn't satisfied with his income, so he was going to improve his income by working for.
So he's moonlighting.
He's moonlighting
by going into a storage container, and he doesn't have any questions about how all these babies got there. I mean, wow.
He didn't have to. He actually didn't do any examinations. He just signed the papers to collect the money.
Okay. So he may have never even seen these babies.
Probably not. In many cases, he may have seen some of them. But by and large, he wasn't doing anything except collecting a fee. And of course, he was sharing the money with Melvin Weisberg.
So they had a little racket going.
Yeah, a little racket going. And the state of California was paying, I forgot how much they paid, but it was amounting to hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Wow.
So, and that was back when.
I mean, I just have to think, because when David DeLayden, when CMP, when you and Troy and Sandra exposed everything that was going on with Planned Parenthood, and that they were selling, or at least agreeing that they would, I mean, negotiating for the sale of baby body parts and all of that, and that then you find yourself on the defendant side of the lawsuit, David and Sandra as well, and then find themselves on the defendant side of a criminal action. And then here you have somebody that is storing aborted babies. Nobody knows how they got there. Apparently nobody cares. And there's medical fraud. There's a whole list of transgressions happening here, and nobody cares.
Yeah, it just seems like the society has gotten some sort of sickness about this whole area, that they seem to think that having abortions available, which of course facilitates, I'll call it, sexual liberation. That's what it's all about.
Yeah,
that root.
Definitely.
Let's get to the root of this.
Yeah.
Because how do you deal with pregnancies? Contraception isn't perfect, and so you've got a problem that needs to be dealt with, and it's a big problem. So, but to continue with
this is all in the name of autonomy and freedom and all of the.
And I guess we'll say pleasure.
So grotesque.
It's pretty grotesque. Well, so here we see the situation is developing, and we're gradually finding out a little bit more about how it happened and how it ran. and who was making money from it, and what, of course, things had gone badly as far as from Milo Lovato. He must have been pretty shocked when he discovered that his container was gone.
And he wasn't prosecuted either? I mean, this is...
No, he was never prosecuted.
This is, I mean, if it's Medicaid, it's Medicaid fraud. It's fraud.
Of course, yeah.
But because it's in the context of abortion, we just close our eyes.
Yeah.
He
didn't have to return any money as far as I know. Milo Lovato didn't have to return any money.
Wow.
They all got off.
Well, they should have been in jail.
Even kept their you might say their ill-gotten gains.
Wow.
So at this point, when the container had been discovered, taken to the yard, then the county had taken over, and at the county yard, they then found out from that those weren't all the babies.
Oh no!
He had more. So they decided, well, Nick McCool said, we need to collect them all. So,
and nobody ever interviewed him or asked him, question him, I should say, you know, what were you planning to do with these? Were you going to leave them in storage indefinitely? I mean, what was the...
He was hiding out. He was not available for interview. I can assure you. The only time, all the reporters that I'm sure would like to interview him, I tried to interview him too, ended up having a short interview with his wife at their gate one time at their house. He went out there, but she quickly ended it. So we were of course trying to find out more about the whole situation. Where did this guy come from? And but anyway, they went out, and he had more bodies stored in his garage.
Oh.
And children in the neighborhood, they knew about it. So we were finding out. They were saying they called them little people. They said that man keeps little people in his garage in bottles and things. So the kids in the neighborhood knew about it, and you think this is. And some of the neighbors were a little dubious about what was going on too, especially when they read the newspaper.
And the parents didn't say, you know, well, show me where they, you know, I'm curious about this. Wow.
It was kind of suburban, and it was surprising that they just didn't seem to care very much about it. Maybe they had some idea and they figured we just don't want to know. But anyway, it was very strange, and so they collected more of the bodies that he had at his place, and I think they pretty much got for sure they had. Then there was a lot of paperwork, and some of the paperwork had gotten damp when the container tipped over. The paperwork had gotten soaked with formaldehyde. It was a mess, and the county had sort of like a portable office, and they moved the stuff in there so that they could sort through it, you know, with the idea that they should find out what it was about, possibly for prosecution.
Okay.
So, and there were these forms, and even kind of one of the usual things that he called his laboratory, he called it Medical Analytical Laboratory. But on all the forms at the top, it said MAL, which of course means evil.
Yeah.
And all the forms were stamped with evil, with this logo on the forms. And I thought, wow, this is so strange. I don't know what he was.
Did he do that intent? I mean,
I don't think so. Yeah. He wasn't very scholarly.
Okay.
He probably maybe
didn't know.
I don't think he didn't care. He just was doing the things that would get the money, keep the money flowing.
And when so because I'm looking right now actually at one of the photographs of one of these children. So what stage of development were these babies?
As it developed, they were from fairly early stages, and those were typically in small individual boxes. And because of the money aspect, each box, on the lid of the box, it had a number, and it also had the mother's name was on each box.
Wow!
And of course,
and they were just in a box.
They were inside the box with the remains, usually with some formaldehyde if it hadn't been spilled.
Okay.
Now the larger ones were like in plastic tubs. Maybe the kind of tub you would get at a supermarket at a gallon of ice cream. You think some of those round plastic tubs, something like that, about that size. Those were the larger ones. And the largest ones were about 7 months or 8 months. 7 months of gestation, and they weighed like 2 pounds.
Wow.
And they were fully developed.
potentially
And you know,
viable.
they look like babies, except in some cases, of course, they've been rather torn up because the method of aborting them, in some cases, what they now call dilation and extraction, the abortionist had typically torn off the arms and legs.
Yeah. Partial birth.
Partial birth, and you can see some of the pictures. You can see that in the pictures we took the pictures. So, and they were in these containers, and so first of all, there was some idea what the number was. So they started to, you know, count
and
the numbers.
Nobody is caring. I mean, they're looking at these babies. Some of them, as you said, 7 or 8 months gestation, and nobody's saying, wow, we need to figure out where these came from because this is potentially, that in itself is potentially illegal activity.
Well, of course.
And were any of the mothers contacted since their names were?
Well, that's one of the things that happened pretty soon when it was known, it became known that the mothers' names were on it. People that in Los Angeles, women in Los Angeles that knew they got an abortion during the time interval before this container was found, some of them contacted the authorities and said they wanted to have their baby's body returned and buried.
Yep.
They didn't want the baby thrown away or thrown in the trash because they didn't know what the final outcome would be. So there was that aspect came up, and a fair number did contact the authorities and said they wanted the body returned. Now, of course, the government became interested because they said they wanted their money back, potentially.
Wow.
So they sent some investigators at one point, and they went through every box. They sorted through all of them and made a record of them, with all the numbers and so on. And that took quite a while. That was done outdoors. It was, of course, by this time, some of the people in the area, particularly the officers that were nearby, they were starting to complain that the smell was going on and on. And they wanted to have it taken care of and disposed of. So when they went through the container, they took out about, I think about 150 of the late ones. And they took those to the medical examiner's office. That's the coroner in Los Angeles. They're the ones that investigate deaths. And
do you know how many babies were there in total?
I think they determined in total, including the ones they collected, I think the total count was 16,433.
Oh my goodness.
16, there were, that was the total number that he had.
Oh, we did, yes. Somehow when I said 60, now it's just hitting me because you're describing what they look like and what the circumstances were.
Right.
Oh my goodness.
So that was the total number.
Yep.
And of course, so then the question of were the abortions illegal? Or maybe the question was, maybe some of them might have been killed after they were born.
Right.
So those ones that were possibly illegal, they were sent to the coroner's office or the medical examiner's office in Los Angeles, which is a big operation again, because Los Angeles is a huge place, and it had at that time, it had considered the most modern medical examiner's office in the world, which had just been constructed, and it had the finest equipment. It had all kinds of very fancy scientific equipment to do examinations for, in this case, would potentially lead to murder cases and so on. Because generally speaking, people died under unusual circumstances like murder or suicide, drownings and so on, including, of course, in Los Angeles. That's where the movie actors were taken, like Natalie Wood and William Holden and so on. And the coroner, of course, was acquiring some sort of fame because he tended to talk to the media about them. The media was always interested in the celebrities. And this guy was doing autopsies on celebrities. And his name was Thomas Noguchi. He was from Japan. And he was also a very, I would have to say, attention-hungry person. He always loved to talk to the media. Whenever he went to crime scenes, he put on a whole show for the media. And again, it's so strange that we had these very unusual characters who were present at that time. So in order to do this, we needed some kind of approval. So the Board of Supervisors, and at that time there were 5, we proposed, talking with them, we weren't actually authorities, but would they pass a resolution that these bodies should be examined in order to determine if there had been any criminal prosecution, any criminal activity.
Right. But so, I mean, why wasn't that should have been a matter of course? I mean,
think so.
Why do you need a special resolution
Yeah,
to
well, again, it
investigate
wasn't
something?
happening, so we thought, well, we'll do what we can do.
I mean,
Anyway,
this just, again, I just have to say, this just speaks to the, I mean, honestly, corruption, inherent corruption
I would
within
have to
the
say so.
abortion industry,
It
that
is.
the cover-up, I
Mhm.
mean, this
And
is
then,
nothing less
and
than a
also
cover-up, and all these
partisan-wise,
people are
the
participating in
Democratic
it.
Party, they support it
Sure.
very strongly, and most of the supervisors in Los Angeles, of course, are Democrats because it's a very Democratic area. However, one of them, Mike Antonovich, had been a former legislator in Sacramento, and he was a Republican, and he was basically pro-life.
Yeah.
And they had not only the areas in which they were, the part of the city or the county that they were in charge of, but they also had different responsibilities. It so happened that health care was his particular responsibility. So again, it worked in our favor. Yeah. So we wrote up the resolution that we would like, saying that, that they should be examined and so on. And also the question of afterwards that they should be properly buried and so on. And there may have been 2 separate resolutions. I can't remember if it was all one or not. But anyway, it passed unanimously. Who's going to be against it? It would look very strange if you were elected official. So with the resolution, then we had the opportunity now to do an examination. So we wanted to have this arranged, to have a private pathologist go and do it, because we didn't want to get it politicized. And of course they said, well, then you want to politicize it. So there was a pathologist, which was one of the pro-life doctors. His name was Joseph Wood, and he was in San Diego, and he was all certified and licensed and so on, and had a laboratory of his own. So he agreed to come to Los Angeles to do the pathology. And then we had Dr. Dreisbach agree to come. And so on the appointed day, we went to the medical examiner's office. And
I'm sorry. Yeah, no, this is so unreal that you have to hire your own pathologist to do an investigation that the county should be doing. I mean, and this really should have gone further up the chain. This shouldn't just be the county, because there were state funds involved. I mean, all of this. And I believe at that time, I'm almost certain that those late-term abortions, there would have been some question, because California, even still, abortion was not permitted beyond viability. So, I mean, you had to have so at the very minimum, you'd think they would want to say, well, we want to look at these records and see, was there an actual reason why these had to be done? I mean, reason,
whatever,
probably would have been very broadly interpreted, but it still raised the question.
Yeah. Well,
okay, so you now hire a pathologist, and you go to
and of course
the lab.
I was still kind of keeping in touch with Nick Mikulicich.
Okay.
And of course, we were a little bit standoffish because we didn't necessarily have the same goals.
Sure.
And he wasn't involved with this effort to get the pathologist or the resolution very much, as that wasn't part of his directly involved. So. And
so collecting evidence for potential crimes was not part of it. Okay. All right.
Anyway, so this particular morning, we all arrived there fairly early because we knew we needed to have quite a bit of time. We hoped to get it all done in one day, maybe even in one session. So.
And you were thinking you were going to look at the older babies?
The older ones, yes, the ones that we assumed potentially could be criminal.
Okay.
And I guess we assumed that there were about 200 of them or so.
Wow.
And now they weren't necessarily all going to be fully autopsied.
Okay.
So we went there, and I went, and my role was to take pictures. Okay. Now, I had quite a bit of experience taking pictures, both scientific pictures and also pictures just as an amateur. And so and fortunately, I did have just the right photographic equipment. Now, this is before digital cameras. You had to have film on rolls, if people can remember that old-fashioned stuff. Yep. And you put them in, and you had a camera, and sometimes you had flashlights. It was kind of a lot of equipment sometimes was involved. But so I had my cameras, and I was going to be the photographer, and we had the pathologist, and so we went into the place, and so we had to go to Dr. Noguchi's private office. Now, that was a very strange happening because this Thomas Noguchi was a very strange person, and he was in a lot of political trouble because he'd been politicizing all these things, and he even wrote a book about them. And he was
these Hollywood.
He was Hollywood.
So,
he thought he saw himself as being one of Los Angeles' celebrities.
Wow.
I don't know whether he'd like to go to dinner parties, or I don't know how you can read about his background. As I say, he came from Japan. He was very strange. So we went and sat in his office, and he was trying to find a way to keep us from having access. He didn't want us to do it.
But you had this resolution.
But we did have this resolution, okay. But he was still stalling, and he had some of his assistants there. And of course, we had our team was there. And it was a very big office, and we were sitting there, and I was getting impatient. I think, how long can this go on?
Right. we have something we need to do.
We need to do something today, and it takes time to get here to Los Angeles. And but he was going on talking about the history of pathology and the meaning of the words and morgue and this is all science and nothing morbid about this. No. It's all science. And he was more or less explaining that he was more or less telling he was the most famous pathologist in the world. And
wow.
More or less to that effect. So finally went on, and finally, I think someone was saying, well, look, we need to get going with it. He said, well, I think he was thinking he was going to talk himself. Finally, he realized it wasn't going to work. He says, okay, well, I guess we'll have to start then. So the laboratories were all on the lower floors. His office was on the top floor. And he had everything very rich. He had video cameras there in his office so he could watch all the autopsies being done by the subordinates just sitting at his desk.
Huh.
I mean, it was just an example of his sort of, almost megalomania.
Yeah.
So anyway, we got on the elevator and we went down. And at that point, it was awful. There were flies around. The place, this terrible smell. There were bodies laying around, and there were these gurneys with dead people laying on them, and cabins.
In addition to the babies,
this was the business end.
Okay.
And of course, they were bringing in new bodies. The pickup trucks that were out picking up murdered people.
Oh wow!
It was a big operation. So anyway, by that time they'd already, who some of the subordinates, they'd got the larger ones that had been brought there. They were on like these gurneys, like one of these tables with wheels on it, and these buckets and so on were all sitting on the table, ready for doing the autopsy.
Yep.
So Dr. Wood, and he put on his apron and his gloves, and they had the scales and all the other tools that they use there, and his knives and scissors and whatnot, and. So one of the assistants there, her name was Eva Hauser. She was, I kind of think Noguchi told her that she should come down and be careful and watch what we were doing.
Oh, so she was one of his, not one of yours.
She was one of his employees. She was I think she was called assistant medical examiner, deputy medical examiner. And she was obviously hostile to us.
Uh-huh.
In fact, as we were walking down to the room, she said to me, she said, I know you're not. I know you're this is not real. You've got some project. I said, no, I'm taking pictures. I'm a photographer. No, you aren't. You aren't. You've got there's something wrong with this. She said, I'm going to call the police.
So there's nothing wrong with the fact that there's 200 large babies there.
No.
But there's something wrong with somebody.
Somebody might be finding out about it. They want to keep it secret.
Clearly.
So
wow.
So she said, I'm going to call. I think I'll call the police. We need to have the police here to investigate who you are. And so of course, we weren't using our names. We weren't using any hidden names. So we had our ID. So there was nothing hidden about that. And then I think she said, well, I think I'll call a medical examiner, I'll call the district attorney.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you see, I thought, oh, gosh, maybe I should have told Nick. Because you're always wondering, who should you tell? So I think she did call him up. And he said, well, who's over there? He said, well, Albin Rhomberg. Oh, that's all right. He's there.
I know Albin.
I know him. That's okay.
Oh, there you go.
So he didn't care. He said, that's fine. So she didn't make any progress on it. So they started in, and every time the pathologist, they put them on, they would take one body, and they had to identify them. They had signboards that were the standard thing, like it had the year 1982. Each case had a number, and then this case for the whole thing had a number, and then there was a number of each body, and those are then, of course, they were identifying. If you took a picture, you could put that in the picture, so that identified the body with the picture. So when Dr. Wood would have one there, and when he was ready, I would be standing there, and I would go up and take one or two pictures.
Okay.
And of course, the lighting was pretty good because, naturally this was a laboratory, and I didn't use any flash, which is very important because everything was wet. And if you took a flash, you just get a lot of reflections. So I had just the right. I had a very high-speed camera and high-speed film, so I didn't need any flash. And so I would take basically, a couple pictures of each one, and then, I would stand back until they were ready for the next one. Now, the coroner's office, when he saw we were taking pictures, then they decided, well, we better take pictures too. So he had a photographer come in. So they were taking pictures. And there was another person there that was associated with them. So there were 3 different people taking pictures. These were, of course, all just, regular photography.
Right.
Except the photographer.
And what happened to those pictures?
Well, the one person was actually kind of indirectly part of our team.
Okay.
And later on, he gave us all the negatives.
Okay.
Because he was really kind of on our side. The official photographer for the medical examiner's office, we never knew what happened to them.
Okay.
And frankly, you could see he was not doing a good job.
Right.
He had a very large camera. He didn't care what it was all about. In fact, I don't think he liked taking pictures. I think he wanted to go to lunch or something. You could see he was not doing a good job. And I'll be honest with you, I was doing the best job. But the other person was doing we were motivated. We knew what we wanted. And the other photographer who actually he worked for a mortuary, and he was doing good work too. And he did photography. He had a larger format camera.
Okay.
I was using 35 millimeter. So actually he could take better pictures, higher resolution. So anyway, we proceeded step by step. It was moving, pretty slowly because each one took time. And Dr. Wood was taking specimens. One of the things he was trying to know is, was there air in any of the lungs?
Like they
because if the lungs had air in them, that would indicate that the baby was born alive and breathed.
Yeah.
And therefore, possibly that would be a sign of some kind of post-birth death. That would definitely be a crime.
Yeah.
No question about that. So he was putting these specimens in little containers, which he was planning to take back to his laboratory.
Okay.
Because he had a pathology laboratory. He owned it. And he was going to, do the work. So as we went ahead with this, it was, we got kind of a late start.
I was going to say, how many autopsies can you actually do in an afternoon?
And of course, now we were still in the kind of the morning, but then somewhat to my, I have to say, shock, he said, it's time for lunch.
Of course.
I said, lunch? I don't want to eat lunch.
Yeah,
how are you going to keep from throwing up?
Yeah. Wow.
So they said, oh no, we got to have lunch. So set everything down, out for lunch. Now I thought, the other problem I thought is, while we're gone, they'll find some reason to keep us from coming back. They'll stop us. But they didn't. We came back and we did finish up, by the end of the day.
Okay.
We finished up and we got what we needed pretty well done. So we left and Dr. Wood took his specimens back with him to San Diego. And then later on, someone broke into his laboratory and stole all the specimens. Right.
Oh my goodness. And so was that ever investigated?
I never
So
heard.
he took those specimens back to his lab.
Laboratory. Yeah, in San Diego, his pathology lab.
And then somebody broke into his lab?
Yeah, somehow and stole the specimens.
Oh my goodness. And was that ever investigated?
It was never concluded.
Who would have known? I mean, obviously.
Never concluded. Well, somebody, of course, some
Had
people.
that happened before? I mean, did he have
No,
regular
I don't think that
break-ins?
ever happened. I don't think that ever happened. His laboratory was obviously a secure place.
So he was not actually able to
I don't think
get
he
any
ever.
evidence because
I don't.
somebody.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean,
There were so many of these things, of course, that if we had more time and
but
resources.
didn't that raise? I mean, you would think that that would have raised somebody's. Again, it doesn't. I mean,
Well,
it matters
see,
to
the
me
thing
where
was,
you come down on the
yeah,
issue of
yeah,
abortion, but
yeah, yeah.
I mean, this is criminal
Yeah,
activity at this
right,
point.
right. Yeah, breaking in somebody's laboratory and stealing
Wow.
specimens.
And I mean, stealing evidence that is potentially going to be used in a criminal prosecution.
Right, right. You're stealing. In effect, that was the
Wow.
purpose.
And nobody cared.
Well, we cared, but nobody cared
I
enough
mean,
to do anything
did the
about it.
prosecutor in San Diego care? Nobody cared.
Nobody seemed to care.
Wow.
And of course, I think part of it is it was such a huge case. There were so many cases. Like Mikulicich, he was trying to figure out, well, what can I do about this? And he was genuinely looking into it. Now, some of these minor things, I think that's why some of what he considered lesser things, like stealing the specimens, I think he figured, well, that's small potatoes, you know. I'm trying to find out what's going on.
Yeah, but it's not stealing specimens, it's stealing evidence.
Evidence, sure. There was evidence, stealing the evidence.
That's criminal.
Yeah, it's definitely criminal. And you think, but of course, I suppose Los Angeles, so much stuff is going on.
But I mean, this would have to raise, it's huge. I mean,
it's huge.
This doesn't happen every day that you come across a storage container full of dead bodies.
Yeah.
And I mean, just by that, because even if you say, okay, well, these are unborn children, but these are dead human beings. Right. Nobody wants to know. Nobody cares how they got there, why they're there, what somebody was going to do with them, why any evidence regarding their, potential criminal activity involved in their killing, why that evidence was stolen. I mean, this should be a movie.
Yeah,
this is unbelievable.
Yeah. It's
unbelievable.
It has so many absolutely strange aspects and also such strange coincidences, of the particular characters involved, particularly Thomas Noguchi. So he, by the way, he was, because he had gotten in trouble with the supervisors because of his behavior, he was, I think, the very next day, they demoted him. And I think he was moved down to being
because you were in the lab with him, or
no, because
that was already in
the other
works?
Things. He was in trouble because he'd been sensationalizing, particularly cases involving movie actors and celebrities.
Right. And so, at that point, were there any additional bodies of the babies that had not been? I mean, could Dr. Wood have gone back and gathered more specimens, or?
He could have, but I think we'd done the largest ones, the latest term ones. And I think if he wanted to, he could have gone back. But again, it was kind of burdensome because he's a busy guy and we weren't paying. he was working for free. And this was, quite an imposition on him to come to Los Angeles. It wasn't nearby. So I guess we were
kind of my lab broken into again, and what kind of characters are willing to steal this evidence? Wow.
I suppose maybe at some point he figured he just didn't want to get more involved because it was causing him trouble. Breaking into his lab and taking up his time, and so.
Well, you don't know if they're willing to steal, and they might. I mean, who knows what else they're willing to do?
Yeah. So
wow.
So anyway, we did have at that point quite a lot of evidence.
I mean, this is like organized crime level.
It is. Indeed, exactly what it was. That's what it was. So from that point forward, one of the next phases, of course, was we wanted to see if we could have a burial. Mm-hmm. But of course, the other feminists, they said, no, this all needs to be incinerated. This is just medical waste, as they said. Yeah. So that started.
I mean, here's the thing. What's it to them? I mean, why do they have to take such a stand on that? Why can't they just? And did they actually look at these babies? Because again, I am looking at a photograph right now, that you took. Yeah. I don't see how you can look at that and say, this is okay, and we're just going to ignore this and just burn the evidence and move on. I mean, how can you do that?
Yeah.
I mean, you have to have. There's something so severely wrong with you if if your ideology, your pro-abortion ideology
Mm.
is so prevailing, I mean, and all encompassing that it clouds every other bit of common sense and
Mhm.
human compassion.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, that's why we decided to call it the Holocaust. I mean,
Yep.
it was like
Yep.
exterminating certain classes of people. Now, of course, so at that point, we started a long process to try to arrange for the burial, and that took about 3 years
So 3 years to get the
to get finally have a burial.
what? I mean, what is the holdup?
Well, constant legal battles by the radical feminists to block us from
But
having a burial.
and nobody saying, okay, wait, let's actually, in all that time, nobody said, let's actually investigate what happened here and see if there was any criminal activity.
Nope.
Nobody.
Meantime,
I mean, that's
no.
just so many levels of
Mhm.
negligence. I mean, that in itself should be criminal.
Yeah, you
That
would think so.
say, there's a, and again, I have to go back to that number. Over 16,000 human
Mhm.
beings are in a storage container in somebody's backyard, and nobody cares. Nobody.
Well, some people care, but
I mean, you care, but I mean, nobody.
the official,
no official.
no
There was
official.
not one person who was willing to stand up. I mean,
Mhm.
what a bunch of cowards!
Mhm.
And
Well, they were politically motivated, of course.
well, of course, because
Mhm.
my pension is much more important than
Mhm.
actually figuring out
Mhm. Mhm.
what happened here. And if
Mhm. Well, of course,
wow,
once we did get the pictures, then of course we wanted to expose those pictures to the public as soon as possible.
sure, yeah,
The burial came later, so we arranged a press conference quite promptly, maybe within a week or so after we got maybe a couple of weeks after we got the pictures and got enlargements made and so on, and had that at the press club in Los Angeles. And we invited some of the pro-life legislators, like at that time, Senator David Roberti.
okay,
He was a senator from Los Angeles, a state senator, and he was very pro-life. He was a Democrat too. Back then, there was still a division
Sure.
within the party. They weren't all. So he came, and there was another state senator, Alex Garcia, and they agreed to come. And I think we had, I think maybe Mike Antonovich might have come to the press conference. And of course, we invited, put out a notice for all the media to come.
Mhm.
Well, naturally, they were interested because, this was still a big story.
Yeah.
I mean, so we had the press conference and we showed the pictures, and of course, the people were shocked to see the pictures. And of course, by and large, the newspapers, they wouldn't publish the pictures.
Yeah.
They said, we
Again,
can't,
just so many levels of
we can't
collusion.
publish these pictures. They're too horrible. So,
wow.
and
rather
then,
than, wow, this is really happening. We
Yeah.
have to stop this.
yeah.
We just need to stop showing what this actually is.
Right.
It's just,
And at the press conference, some of the feminists and their attorneys were there. And at one point there, some of the speakers were there. And one of the feminists was making a big point saying that those pictures are illegal. They said, those pictures are a crime. You can't take pictures. There's a law that says you can't take pictures of dead bodies in a morgue.
but you can, I just can't.
So, well, anyway, David Roberti, I don't know if he's still alive, but he was a very bright, he was one of the smartest legislators there ever were. He was very bright, very capable. He was the president pro tem of the Senate
Okay.
in Sacramento.
Those were definitely
And so
different days.
when he heard them saying that, he shouted, he says, well, he said, they took pictures at Auschwitz.
Right.
And, that's different. But anyway,
Explain
at that
how
point,
that's different.
at that point, it got kind of wild and people started fighting literally. They were literally fighting. So the press conference kind of got shut down and we actually had kind of more or less to escape.
Wow.
It was getting violent, literally. And there were people shouting and so we gathered our stuff up and left. We'd achieved our purpose with the press conference, and of course, we wish they would have published it all. But they did publish stories about it, but no pictures. Now, later on, when we did finally have the burial, like 3 years later, somebody made an enlargement of the main picture, the latest, the one that was the oldest, and made it sort of like a billboard size. And they actually brought it to the cemetery. So and at the cemetery, the news people were there. So they did take a picture of the caskets with the babies by the boxes, I'll call them. And in the background was this billboard-sized picture. And they put that in the LA Times, like on page 3. But again, it was a picture of a picture, you know.
Right, but still,
But
I mean,
they still, at least they did that.
Yeah.
Yeah, they did that. That was about the only time they ever published the pictures. Now, we did take these to foreign countries then, because, of course, this was an issue in other countries too. And in other countries, they seem to be much more willing to publish things, depending on what the newspaper were like. In Mexico, we had to come in Spain, Portugal, Brazil
countries largely.
Yeah,
I mean,
some of these countries, yeah.
Anyway,
and also their media there are much more. First of all, they tend to have many more small newspapers, different kinds of newspapers, liberal, conservative, and they seem much more willing to publish pictures. And they published pictures in some cases, and then some of the local groups published them too, printed them as we did. Then later on, we made a brochure. We called it the American Holocaust, and we put the pictures and we put the story. Sort of a chronology of the story, and we put some of the facts about the weight and the age of the gestational age of the babies and so on, and we distributed that as pro-life literature.
Yeah, it's just unfortunate that there wasn't. I mean, because now you have lots of outlets, so you have independent journalists, and you have
the internet.
You have
now these pictures
lots of channels to distribute your information. So although I mean, I think publishing photographs like the ones that you took would probably get you, I mean, I don't know that you'd be able to keep those videos up on some of those channels. Let's just say that.
Yeah, the complaints on, well, and of course we have all the pictures, all of these pictures, the ones that we took, including the ones, both the 35 millimeter and the 40 by 60 millimeter, those are all available on the internet now, because we've more or less recently, partly because we were always very careful with the negatives, because we didn't want to have any copies made unless it was controlled, somebody that was friendly, because we were afraid, of course, they would destroy the negatives. Someone would see those and they would say, they would think they were doing somebody a favor. So we finally, what we did within the last few years, I wanted to have them digitally scanned. Once they were scanned, of course, nobody could destroy them as long as we kept a copy someplace, you know. You can put it on a little chip, you know, or you can put it on chips and send it to your friends and put it in your lockbox so that there's no way they could destroy them. But we did post them on the internet, and in fact, Life Legal Defense had something to do with it, because I was always trying to find a place to scan them, but I couldn't find. I thought maybe there was a friendly place, but I never. Finally, I gave up on it, and I looked into how do you scan them, and there's these scanning machines that scan negatives. They're all made in Taiwan. There's certain companies that make them. So I actually bought one. It cost several $1,000s just for the one job, because I didn't want it. I was worth it. And so we scanned them at the highest possible resolution in full color.
No, they are really
and they're all there now. Anybody that wants them now, you can just press a button. You can be any place in the world. All we have to do is send you the list. Now, of course, if they find out, they might want to take it down. But even if they take it down, we can put it back up again.
Right. Wow.
So they are there on the cloud, as they say, and anybody wants to use them.
At this point, I'm assuming you're working, you're living your life. Was there any backlash for all of this activity? I mean, because you're now a known figure. I mean, you're holding press conferences, you're publishing these newspapers across the globe, and
well, it was a little bit hard. Another thing is I have a very uncommon name. In fact, it's unique. My first and last name, I checked it out on the internet. I'm the only person in the world, whatever, 7 billion people, I'm the only person in the world that has that name. It's a very strange last name and strange first name. So that makes it, if they see my name, then they can check me out. Like now I'm on Wikipedia, for example.
I saw that, by the way. Yes.
I didn't put myself there, but somebody put me there. It's not, part of it's true and part of it isn't true. I should maybe.
Well, we should correct it. We should definitely correct it.
And, of course, I still had, I'm still interested in physics. although my physics career was kind of I would say, permanently interrupted. Although I continued to be interested in it and have some involvement. I had some involvement with the space program at different times. And, I still had friends that were involved with it. I still do, involved with physics. So, and, but, I was no longer professionally employed in physics. It was kind of an amateur activity at that point. So that's how it kind of affected as far as my professional career, you might say.
I could imagine. Wow. Well, thank you so much. Thank you for sharing your story with us, and thank you for what you did in terms of doing really everything in your power possibly to expose what went on at that time, and which still goes on. I mean, we know these things are still going on.
It goes on in foreign countries too, and unfortunately, many of these countries, we tried, for example, one of the follow-up on it, there was a Mexican systems engineer. His name was Jaime Bernal, and he had a big family. I think he had like 13 or 14 children. He was a very kind of innately pro-life guy, and he happened to be in San Diego, and he saw one of those brochures that we had.
Oh, wow!
And he had no particular interest in pro-life at all. But when he saw that brochure, it kind of converted him.
Wow.
So he got in touch with us and said he wanted to publish it in Spanish. And he said that they're trying to legalize abortion in Mexico. And he thought that those pictures would maybe convince the legislators not to do it.
Yep.
So he said, well, you're free to use them. You can use the pictures and make translations, whatever you want. So he was a very kind of a big thinker. And he had some resources too. And so he said, what I want to do is I want to print out very nice copies, and I'm going to go to Mexico City. And he says, in Mexico, it's the mothers that make the difference.
Okay.
The legislators, if he figures, they're all corrupt, more or less. He said, he was very cynical about it. He said, but if we show the legislators' mothers these pictures and say,
legislators' mothers.
Yes, not just mothers. Yeah, just the legislators' mothers. He said, if we show these to the legislators' mothers and ask and then propose, do you want your family to be known, your son to be known as someone who voted for this kind of behavior? And so he got all the addresses of legislators' mothers. This guy was, he'd hire private detectives and so on. He had a fair bit of money, and he was very capable. As I say, he was a system engineer. Yeah. So he did that. He made copies, and he had them taken to their homes. And kind
of brilliant.
Yeah. This guy was. And then he had a conference in Mexico City too. He invited me to the conference and other people too. And he wanted to, invite the legislators. He was very effective and knew how to. He was very political. So then he decided to go internationally. He says, well, now I read they're going to legalize abortion in Portugal. I said, yes. And he said, yeah, but he said, you got to go to Portugal now. I said, well, I don't, why would I go to Portugal? Well, you have to go to Portugal because
you have to give these to the mothers of the legislators there.
You've got to go over there and publish these pictures and so on, have these pictures in Portugal. And contact all the legislators in Portugal and tell them that they can't vote for this. I said, well, he said, it's all arranged. He said, I got the tickets and everything. I'll take you to the airport. Oh, wait a minute. No. Yeah, there's no excuse. It's a shorter time.
You got to do it.
You got to do it. There's no excuse. So I actually had some of the negatives and so on. And he said, you just take those home. So I went, he convinced me. I went to the airport.
What effect did that have? An effect on the legislature?
In Portugal?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we stirred up. I'll say we stirred. When I got there,
good for you.
We met the right people.
Okay. It sounds like he was well connected. So
yeah. In Portugal, what we would call the medical association. In Portugal, the medicine's arranged differently.
Okay.
Here in the United States, the licenses are given out by the state.
Mm-hmm.
But we have professional associations like the American Medical Association.
Sure.
They don't have any control over licenses or discipline or anything.
Mm-hmm.
They're a professional association. In Portugal, the medical association, called the Orders of Doctors, they control the licenses,
Okay.
not the state. And there was a doctor there who was head of the medical association, and of course, Portugal has a background. It's a kingdom.
Yep.
Of course, they don't have kings. Recently got rid of their kings. But this particular doctor, he was there. Medicine is kind of like hereditary.
Okay.
The top-ranking people, their father was a doctor, their grandfather was a doctor, and sometimes, of course, they hold the top position. So this guy had the top position of medicine in Portugal. He was a pediatric surgeon, and he was a celebrity because he'd surgically separated Siamese twins, which made him a celebrity. And his father had been head of the medical school, and his grandfather had been the physician to the king. And, it was, so I figured, well, I got to meet this guy. So, and of course, they had a pro-life group there, and there was a woman that was kind of head of the pro-life group, and she was a legislator too.
Okay.
And her husband was a doctor.
That's helpful.
Yeah. So I met them, and rather quickly. And of course, I had all these pictures and other things, so they were interested in using them. So we did make use of them, and they had hearings in the legislature. They had a law they were trying to pass. And so we made the brochure and distributed it, for the Portuguese version, to oppose their law. And, we went to the legislature. The trouble is, at that time, the Communist Party was very strong in Portugal, and the Socialist Party. And together they formed a majority. Of course, in Europe, you have many parties. There were more the liberals. Yeah.
Yep.
And the pro-life parties, they didn't have enough to stop it. But the Social Democrats, the communists and the socialists, so unfortunately they had a majority, and so they legalized it.
That was a good effort.
We did cause them a lot of distress. And while I was there, then I went to a few other countries too, as long as I was nearby. I went to Belgium. Then there was a meeting of pro-life doctors in Germany, so I went to Germany. And previously, we had also used them in Spain, because Spain was legalizing abortion too. And I had a friend who did pro-life work, and he was perfectly bilingual because he was a Spanish teacher. And he and I went to Spain, Madrid, and we used the pictures there to some extent too. And then later on, I went to Brazil and Dominican Republic and some other places.
You really did travel the globe.
Yeah, not the globe.
Pictures. I have to ask in Germany, just because, you talked about the analogy with the Holocaust, and I've been to Dachau because I have family that lives close by there.
Yeah,
and
I went to Dachau too.
Yes, I remember you saying that. Yeah,
and I gave him a copy of our brochure for their archive. I said, "We got a Holocaust."
Well, good. Yes, we have our own Holocaust. Yeah. But I'm curious how they respond. Whether there were people there who were more receptive to your images,
they had a pro-life organization there, and the head of that organization was a doctor named Siegfried Ernst.
Okay.
I don't know if you ever heard of him.
I have not. No.
He was very interesting. Again, he was kind of like multi-generational doctor, typical maybe in Europe too.
Sure.
If it was in your profession. And he lived in Ulm. And I met him at this meeting, and he was very helpful. And of course, he wanted to use the pictures and do other things too. And he was a writer and speaker, and also in Austria too, in the German-speaking countries. So we had some connections with him, and gave a few talks there, and gave him some whatever access we had, use of the pictures, anything that would be helpful to him. And then in Belgium, there was another doctor there, again, multi-generational doctor. He was interested, and so we provided him with the use of the pictures and so on too. Anybody that could make use of them, we did. So in those countries, the pro-life groups. And they had pro-life groups, but, they were struggling too because they were up against the liberal regimes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they were legalizing abortion, and they were starting to do lots of abortions.
Yeah.
So, same thing with Brazil.
Yeah, so tragic.
Yeah.
I mean, you think countries, like Germany, that would have known better. You have countries that really were explicitly Catholic, and we are really losing.
Spain and Portugal,
losing on abortion, losing on assisted suicide. Just really, really tragic.
And of course, they lost on the whole question of contraception. They lost that a long time ago.
Well,
before.
That's the
beginning. That was the groundwork. That was the foundation. Of course, inevitably they were going to follow up with, as they did with abortion and euthanasia and so on.
Yeah, and it's tragic because they drew from our Supreme Court's rulings.
Sure.
I remember going to the European Court of Human Rights and doing some courses over in Strasbourg, and the professors there talked about American constitutional law as if it were the law of the world.
Oh yes, yeah.
It was really, really shocking. And I remember asking them, I said, "Why are you referencing our Supreme Court cases? They should have no precedence."
Yeah. Well, what about even California?
They did, yeah.
Why would we represent Rose Bird? Rose Bird was, when you look at, how did she get on the Supreme Court?
Yeah.
Yes. She was Jerry Brown's chauffeur.
Yeah.
She'd gone to law school, but she was no hotshot. And then he appointed her, she was in the cabinet. And then suddenly he appoints her Chief Justice of the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
She finally, of course, when they finally had a retention election, they voted her out like 2-1 when people finally got a chance to vote her out. But she gave those decisions with a few other liberals.
Yeah.
No,
and here we are.
Yeah.
All those years later.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Albin. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for what you did to investigate this case, to do everything in your power to try to get some action on them. And we're going to try to continue that now and hopefully change some hearts and minds.
And as I say, the more people that can see the pictures, the better, because I don't think there are any better pictures, really. There's some individual pictures there are that we see that people use that are good, but and there's some, I like the picture, the one of the embryo, in the fallopian tube transparent. That's a beautiful picture because it's so early. But there are other pictures, but definitely these pictures are available, and they're no charge for using them. Print them, use them any way you can.
No, we need to get those out. And for people who are squeamish, because I know there are a lot of pro-lifers when we talk about using images who are saying, no, we shouldn't do that. I would like to know why. Why can we not show pictures? Like you said, the reason the world knows about the horrors of the Holocaust is because of photographic images.
Right.
That's why they know. That's why we know. Look at William Wilberforce and slavery, showing the tools that were used in the slave trade. Those tangible artifacts make a big difference because they make it real, and your photographs make what happens with abortion real. So thank you.
Well,
and we will continue to.
And I do think there's a distinction of pictures. We have the pictures like Nielsen, the famous Swedish photographer.
Yes.
Now, the truth of the matter is those babies were aborted. They weren't. He just took beautiful pictures.
They were early on.
And then he took all the way. And you have these books like The First 9 Months of Life. You can buy them in any bookstore. And nobody
the Nielsen photos still really.
They are. If you know the truth,
they're
kind of creepy.
Those babies are not alive.
No. But they're not all torn up and so on. And people sometimes they see those as like coffee table books.
Yeah.
Ours are definitely not coffee table pictures.
No, but people should look at them. They should know.
And now people do know. We do know about human development. From the earliest stage, we have microscopic pictures of embryos and zygotes. You can get right from the very beginning.
Yeah.
So that knowledge is well known now, and but still, in spite of superior knowledge, our moral code seems to be moving the other direction.
Well, and this is the problem with abortion. When you make this your cornerstone, then every other every other fact has to bow to that.
Mm-hmm.
And everything will then eventually correspond to that one cornerstone. I mean, and you have to make the analogy with slavery again, look at Alexander Stevens' cornerstone speech, where he talked about slavery being the cornerstone of this country, and how just appalling. We look at that now and we say, how could somebody have believed that? All you have to do is look at how people view abortion today, and you can see how that happens.
Sure.
So,
yeah.
But thank you.
Okay.
Thank you again.
All right.
God bless you.
And so on. That container company, which we mentioned, was in near the harbor. Take this off here. This is an April issue of 2026, right? So this just came out a few days ago. And there's the company advertising in this magazine called The New American. And that company is still in business. In fact, it's just joined with a larger company. And these shipping containers are used now sometimes for shipping, but they're also used for storage. People buy them and put them someplace because they're secure. They're steel containers. Also, many of them are refrigerated, so you can keep food and ship food in them too. So that's Martin Container Company. Nicholas Martin was one of the people that actually discovered. His workers found those laying on the ground. He's the first one that called the authorities, and he was helpful to us. On the inside here, we put the pictures of some of the aborted babies and some relevant quotes, like from Margaret Sanger, the founder of Planned Parenthood. She stated, the most merciful thing that a large family does to one of its infant members is to kill it. So she believed that families should kill their own children. And we have over here a quote from Heinrich Himmler, the famous Nazi who ran the concentration camps. Again, quoting how we should be tough and we shouldn't be worried about things like this. If there's hundreds of bodies laying around, it's a good thing. And then, of course, we put here, we got a letter from President Reagan at the time, after this happened, stating that there should be a proper burial, which eventually we did have. And these are some of the pictures of the aborted babies. You can see different methods of abortion. This particular one, you can see the abortionist has twisted the legs off the baby, and one hand is pulled off. And this baby weighs about 2 pounds. This one here, you can see, is torn to shreds, pretty much. Some of these are what they call salt poisoning. They put concentrated salt in the uterus and kill the baby that way. Here's one that's been torn to pieces. You can see, strangely enough, the baby's face and profile there is very peaceful. It seems so strange, but torn to pieces. We also, many people surprised, we knew the doctors who did these, so we put their names there, Scott, Ricky, Gordon, Gooey. We put their names right there. People said, well, they'll sue you. We said, well, if they did the abortion, that's supposedly, they say that's medical work, so they should be willing to, if you want to say be proud of their work. The fact of the matter is, none of them ever sued us. They didn't want to have the notoriety because they know not everybody agrees with them. So here's the purpose of this thing. As we say, history and future generations will hold each one of us responsible. Do everything possible to stop the killing now. And we show these brochures, distribute information, find out about abortionists in your own community, teach other people about this, and where you can, try to rescue people from abortion. As you know, people go to the Planned Parenthood clinics and try to encourage and offer help to the women that are going in there so that they will not feel that they have to abort their child, and instead they will get the help they need that the child can be born and have a human life. So now we've had these in other languages too. So this one here, as I say, is the English one. Let's look at it. Put this aside. We also have mass production ones. These are somewhat different. We printed these on newsprint. And it includes more or less the same thing. Included here, we put the Hippocratic Oath. Now, obviously, the Hippocratic Oath is being ignored now, too, because in the Hippocratic Oath, you do not kill anybody, patients, as far as you don't kill babies or do abortions. That's against the Hippocratic Oath. And that was the standard for medicine for literally thousands of years. And now we have changed that and have abandoned it. So now we have some in Spanish here. People in other countries were interested in this because they were, in some cases, legalizing abortion too. And so we thought the pictures would be helpful for them. So again, they just called this Holocaust in Spanish, but they didn't call it the American Holocaust. And you can see some of the same pictures here. Here's another picture where some of the workers are sorting through where this cargo container is up at the top here. It's a black and white picture. These are county employees where they were doing the counting and sorting them out and finding 16,433 ultimately. Some of these other pictures you've seen here. And here's again information here. Again, on the back, we put information as we see here about in Spanish, in this case, the Hippocratic Oath and the macabre situation here. And some cases they had local groups were set up, and we let them, of course, use that for their local group, whether it was in this case in Tijuana or Mexico City or in other places. And here's an editorial. So again, these pictures were useful for purposes of that sort. Now let's look at, here we have a copy at Portugal. About that time, Portugal was thinking of legalizing abortion. Unfortunately, they went ahead and did so. But I went to Portugal, and we used these pictures in Portugal to again try to educate people there. And of course, you can see human life is inviolable. That's in the Constitution of Portugal article. Yet, in spite of that, they went ahead and legalized abortion. And you can see the legalization of abortion is a crime against humanity. And you see here in Portugal, of course, because it's a Catholic country, they also would quote things. Here's a quotation from John Paul II, the Pope, who was Pope at that time. And here's a quote from the scriptures and so on. In Portugal, they don't have the same sort of attitude of absolute separation. So let's look on the back again. When they were legalizing it, we kept a record of the vote, and we listed all of the members of the parliament here with how they voted. And you can see the politicians, the socialists, and economists, they in effect are passing a law of death. And you can see all their names here. Some of the ones that were very active. I remember there was a communist woman deputy who was extremely aggressive about it. Her name was Zita Ziabra. You can see her name right there, and you can see her name right up here. She was one of the most active ones to promote abortion. And then, of course, at that point, when this was printed, their Supreme Court had not ruled yet, so we had question marks here as to how the court would rule, because after the legislature there, the court had an opportunity to make a decision about it. So, and again, if we look inside here, you can see they refer to the American Holocaust here. And this is the case of Melvin Roy Weisberg. He's the one that was collecting these fetuses that we took the pictures of. And you see it says here, the reality of life and killed or died before birth. And you can see here's some pictures, well-known pictures. There's a picture of the maybe the embryo inside the amniotic sac there. Here's one of the famous pictures of just the feet. You can see with the fingers there to give you an idea of the size. And then the inside, the Portuguese had very high quality printing, better than any of our printing here, actually. You can see, as I sometimes call it, it's printing like National Geographic, beautiful color printing. And these are some of the pictures. And of course, across the top, I'll translate it for you. This is from Matthew's Gospel. What you do to the least of my brothers, you do to me. And of course, in this case, what you're doing is, tearing them to pieces. And of course, here, this means the last judgment. And of course, that's in the scriptures. It says that's how people will be judged in the end. Is how do they treat their least brothers in Gospel according to Matthew? And so they put that right across the top above the pictures. So what you do to the least of my brothers, you do to me. And here's some of the pictures. And again, the Portuguese published this. They put, again, some statements of the great nations have corruptions. For example, this Holocaust in America. See, and then you have here, again, it says here with the communists and the socialists, they're proceeding to imitate the same mistakes. After, we've done this, Americans have done this, and here the Portuguese, and of course they did go ahead and have the same mistakes. But Portugal is now having problems with their population. This is since they legalized it, it's now 40 years or more, and the things that we predicted are true. So, of course, Brazil is a former Portuguese colony, so unfortunately Brazil has abortion too. Almost all the countries have caved in. So I think we've covered. Now, we've also taken these pictures to other countries too, but I don't have some printed examples of them, but they've been helpful to bring the reality to people's attention, because as they say, a picture is worth 10,000 words. You don't have to have any words. It's a universal language. Of course, we've made these with the information and history and so on attached to it. So there's a few other things I might mention. This is not part of the same, but again, it's a picture. This is actually from the United States, and this is some babies being burned. This is in near Omaha, Nebraska, and they're throwing the babies' bodies into a furnace and burning them out. You can see all the bones there and so on. Ironically enough, the same place was incinerating animals too, like from veterinary clinics and so on. So, well, here's the Spanish newspapers in those countries too. One other thing, let's see, we have a newspaper here. This is a newspaper from Madrid, Spain. That's just the name of the newspaper. And you can see, this is in Madrid. This is their parliament building. And they were again discussing whether or not they should legalize abortion. And you can see they used some of the same pictures. We were there in Madrid. You can see, again, unfortunately, they went ahead too. See? Abortion is the massacre. It's the great massacre of our times. And this is the headline on the front of this paper. Unfortunately, we wouldn't see that on an American newspaper. So, that's, I think, pretty complete, huh?